This is BBC One. Now, later than scheduled, the news with Ben Brown in the studio, Clive Myrie from the Vatican, and Jane Hill in central London.
While our greatest debt is owed to all those who paid the ultimate price, we should never forget how the war changed the lives of virtually everyone.
The King tonight urges the world to renew its commitment to restoring peace as he marks VE Day. A 2-minute silence at Westminster Abbey marked the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War in Europe. More than 70 veterans of that war joined the royal family for a service of remembrance.
Our other main story tonight, a new Pope Leo XIV now leads the Roman Catholic Church. White smoke and cheers from tens of thousands gathered here in St. Peter's Square after an election done and dusted in less than 2 days. Greeting the faithful, a new era dawns with the former Cardinal Robert Prevost becoming the first ever Pope from the United States.
We have a Papa. We have our Father. That's enough.
Very exciting. I didn't expect it at all. I didn't expect our new Pope to be American.
Also tonight, the United States and the UK agree a deal on trade and tariffs that both say is historic.
Really important deal. This is going to boost trade between and across our countries.
The agreement was announced in a televised phone call between President Trump and the Prime Minister. And as interest rates are cut to 4.25%, the Governor of the Bank of England tells us there could be more rate cuts to come.
On BBC London, as London commemorates the 80th anniversary of VE Day, we find out how the capital still bears the scars of the Second World War to this day.
Hello and a very good evening from Buckingham Palace. The King has used a speech tonight marking VE Day to urge the world to renew its commitment to restoring peace. At a concert marking the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War in Europe, the King said the Allied victory was a powerful reminder of what can be achieved when countries stand together in the face of tyranny. His comments came at the end of a day of commemoration. 2,000 people attended a service of thanksgiving at Westminster Abbey. Alongside the King and Queen, the Prime Minister and other dignitaries were about 70 surviving veterans of that war, now in their 90s and older. Here at Buckingham Palace on this day 80 years ago, as Britain celebrated, a huge crowd greeted King George VI, Queen Elizabeth and their daughters, Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret, as they appeared on the balcony, along with the Prime Minister Winston Churchill. Although the war was still being fought in the Far East, for many people it was a day of relief and elation. Well, today's anniversary is being marked in many parts of Europe. We'll have more on that shortly. But first, our senior royal correspondent Daniela Relf has been following events here.
In a week that mixed pomp and pageantry with reflection and prayer, tonight was the party. The King addressed the concert with a speech that spoke powerfully of past sacrifice and the duty of future generations.
We should also rededicate ourselves not only to the cause of freedom, but to renewing global commitments to restoring a just peace where there is war, to diplomacy and to the prevention of conflict. just as those exceptional men and women fulfilled their duty to each other, to humankind, and to God, bound by an unshakable commitment to nation and service, in turn, it falls to us to protect and continue their precious legacy, so that one day hence, generations yet unborn may say of us, they too bequeathed a better world.
The band The Darkness, part of an eclectic lineup. Earlier in the day, a service of reflection at Westminster Abbey was filled with memories. The opening hymn, O God Our Help in Ages Past, was sung during services on the 8th of May 1945. The first prayer was also used 80 years ago.
Remember, O Lord, all those, the brave and the true, who have died the death of honour and are departed in the hope of resurrection to eternal life.
Music from the time filled the Abbey, itself bombed in 1941. Veterans were given white roses by young volunteers, a symbol of peace. A procession of artefacts from the war was placed on the high altar, including a child's gas mask. And the 10-year-old great-great-grandson of Winston Churchill lit a peace candle.
Let us pray for peace in Europe and across the world, in our time and for generations to come.
Earlier, from inside the Abbey, the royal family had led a national 2-minute silence. As the service ended, departures were slower than usual. The royal family stopped again and again to talk to veterans. This generation's numbers are dwindling, but their stories hold their power. Daniela Ralph, BBC News.
Well, as we saw there, events have been taking place around the UK to mark VE Day. There was a service of remembrance at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire. Dozens of veterans were there, some of whom had attended the celebrations 80 years ago, including Britain's oldest surviving World War II veteran, as Phil Mackey reports.
3 cheers for the veterans! Hip, hip, hooray!
Their numbers are dwindling, but there were more than 40 of those who celebrated the first VE Day in uniform who made it here for the commemorations. There was a special tea party. The menu looked like a ration card, but it was lavish fare compared to what was on offer in 1945. Britain's oldest surviving World War II veteran, Desert Rat Donald Rose, who's 110, took centre stage. The others in the room were comparative youngsters.
And I'd love to turn the clock back for nice memories, you know. But we did a lot. We just got on with it, didn't we? Thought anything about it, really.
It's been interesting speaking to so many people who were there on the first VE Day 80 years ago. And almost all of them have said that the one overwhelming feeling they had then was one of relief.
The going down of the sun, and in the morning we will remember them.
For Tom Hill, a Royal Marine who was a coxswain in a landing craft on D-Day, today's commemoration was bittersweet.
I don't realise how many were killed And it's them that should get the honours, not us.
For an ever-shrinking number of veterans, today was a chance to remember and to celebrate being alive, including the oldest surviving couple to have both served in World War II, Roy and Kathleen Lawrence, who were in the RAF but met after VE Day.
Okay, let's go. Let's go and have some cup of tea and a bit of...
Phil Mackey, BBC News, Staffordshire.
Well, VE Day has been marked across much of Europe today. In Poland, a ceremonial roll call and gun salute marked the anniversary in Warsaw, with the Prime Minister Donald Tusk thanking today's armed forces. At the National Memorial in Prague, the armed forces and veterans were joined by politicians, including the Czech President, Petr Pavel, to lay wreaths. And in Berlin, Germany's surrender was marked with a solemn ceremony attended by the new Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, and President Frank-Walter Steinmeier. And let's cross to Paris, where President Macron has been taking part in commemorations at the Arc de Triomphe. Our Europe editor, Katia Adler, is there for us tonight. Katia.
Well, as you can imagine, Jane, ceremonies today have been hugely symbolic, and it felt like this normally loud, chaotic heart of Paris came to a standstill when President Macron came to the tomb of the unknown soldier to rekindle the eternal flame there at the Arc de Triomphe. This arch for the French historically is seen as a rallying point at a time of military victories. But marking Victory in Europe Day today, the mood was really somber. The war in Ukraine is casting a shadow across Europe. I mean, think, when Europe had its victory over the Nazis, it had powerful allies by its side, the United States and Russia, along with the rest of the Soviet Union. But fast forward these 80 years to now, and most Europeans look at Russia as the greatest threat to their security. And who did Vladimir Putin invite to Moscow to mark VE Day but President Xi of China, another leader that a lot of Europeans look at with great distrust. And all of this, Jane, when the United States under Donald Trump, and for the first time since the Second World War, has said clearly to Europe, do not rely on us in Washington anymore to always have your back in terms of security. So these commemoration ceremonies today did seem to remind Europe of the new reality it is in and really drive it home.
Katia, thank you. Katia Adler there in Paris. Well, I'll be back with more a little later in the programme. I've been speaking to a naval veteran about his experiences of World War II. But for now, let's cross to join Clive at the Vatican. Clive.
Jane, thank you so much. We're at the Vatican, where the election of the first ever Pope from the United States has taken place today. Cardinal Robert Prevost is now Pope Leo XIV, the leader of some 1.4 billion Catholics right around the world. Well, the white smoke emanating from a chimney high above the Sistine Chapel just after 6 o'clock local time, it was frankly a bit of a shock, coming less than 2 days after the whole process began. But the speed with which the cardinals had managed to find one among them to become pontiff suggested for many that this is a church united. Well, we'll have more on the man himself and what his leadership could mean for the church. But first, here's our religion editor, Ali Maqbool, on the events of this momentous day.
The white smoke that turned a serene May evening into a moment of history and high drama. The excitement transmitting itself through the thousands who'd gathered in St. Peter's Square. Though few had predicted a result would come quite so soon. The bells of the Basilica, another sign that an as yet unnamed cardinal had been chosen to be the new Pope. From all over Rome, tens of thousands now poured into the square. Marching bands had been poised to join them. Though the focal point was the Vatican, there was a sense this was an international occasion.
May he be the best Pope with all the love we're bringing him. We want a renewal, a new church, and that is what we'll have.
Well, it's a bit of stability, hopefully, for the church.
It was more than an hour after the smoke billowed from the chimney of the Sistine Chapel that the protodeacon of the College of Cardinals stepped onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica. I announce to you a great joy, he said in Latin.
Habemus Papam.
We have a pope, before naming him for the first time.
Dominum Robertum Franciscum.
Cardinal Robert Prevost.
Cardinalem Prevost.
And his chosen name as Pope, Leo XIV.
Leonem Decimum Quartum.
And the crowd didn't have too much longer to wait for their first look at Pope Leo. The man from Chicago took a while to take in the magnitude of the moment, and the cheers and the chants of the crowd went on until he spoke.
La pace sia con tutti voi.
Peace be with you, he started in Italian.
Anch'io vorrei che questo saluto.
I'd like this greeting of peace to enter your hearts, he said, to all peoples, to all the earth. Peace be with you.
Aiutateci anche voi.
Very quickly, a theme of building bridges emerged. Through dialogue, through meetings, he said, we must all be one people, always in peace, and a word of thanks to his predecessor.
Grazie a Papa Francesco.
The challenges he faces within the church and as a new towering figure on a troubled global stage are great. But this was a day of celebration.
We're going to get a little bit more from Aleem a little bit later. What a moment it was when the new pontiff appeared at that balcony just behind me there. Well, what do we know about the new Pope Leo XIV and how might he lead the church? Here's Mark Easton.
The presentation of a pope is a supreme moment of religious theatre. Pope Leo XIV was centre stage to tell the world, this is who I am. His predecessor, Pope Francis, in 2013, wore a plain white cassock, eschewing the traditional grandeur of the church. Leo wore a gold and pink stole. He was making a point. Who is Pope Leo XIV? Born Robert Prevost in Chicago in 1955, he became a priest in his early 20s, working for the Augustinians in the city. But his career was divided between America and Peru, where he first joined an Augustinian mission working with the poor and marginalized, and then was appointed as a bishop in the country by Pope Francis. It was Pope Francis who also brought him to the Vatican, making him a cardinal in 2023.
It's not, I think, coincidental that Pope Francis chose me. I've been a missionary my whole life, but I am American, and I think I do have some insights into the church in the United States.
Et ego Robertus Franciscus Cardinalis Prevost.
Insight is undoubtedly one of the qualities the cardinals will have valued. He has a reputation as both a deeply spiritual person, but also a practical manager, skills that will be vital for a pope looking, as he said in his speech, to build bridges and unify.
I think Pope Leo XIV will pursue Pope Francis's radical reforms with vigour and with enthusiasm, but I think there's also a traditional person there at heart, and we'll see someone who is, at his heart, a missionary. He's a missionary friar.
Pope Leo's in tray is bulging with unfinished business and divisive issues.
Smoke out sexism!
The role of women in the church. The question of gay Catholics. And how to respond to the continuing allegations and scandals of sex abuse. He himself has been accused by a survivors group in Chicago of allowing known sex abusers to remain in ministry.
Ma sempre coraggiosa di Papa Francesco, che benediva Roma.
Multilingual, the Pope's speech in Italian this evening praised the courage of Pope Francis. His name, Leo, implies he knows he'll need to show courage too. The prayers of Catholics around the world will be that the universal shepherd can lead his flock to safe pasture. Mark Easton, BBC News.
Well, thousands of people had gathered in St. Peter's Square to witness the white smoke and get a first glimpse of the new Pope. I've been talking to some of those who made the journey here. Standing room only in St. Peter's Square. A moment for the ages.
Viva il Papa!
The rosary is well worn for some.
Eminentissimum Dominum.
For others, brand new.
Robertum Franciscum.
In the crowd, Father Jayan Thrayan from India. He's studying in Rome.
We have a Pope from America. We have a Papa. We have our Father. That's enough.
And for those from the United States, a sense of pride as well as joy. And what do you do?
I'm a student.
Andrea Gallardo is 20 and from Texas.
That's her slogan.
What a moment for you then, eh?
Yes, very exciting. I didn't expect it at all. I didn't expect our new Pope to be American. So, very exciting, very emotional, especially me being raised Catholic all my life. Just knowing that our new Pope is also from the same place that I am.
Hey, USA, let's go!
He's happy.
Very happy.
How will he govern, and what will the priorities be for this first US pontiff? All that's for another time. For now, his fellow countrymen savor the moment. What do you think he is going to bring to the role?
I think just the love and showing that he has love for everyone, and just like all popes, they bring that compassion to people, and I think he'll bring that, and we're just excited.
Politically, America has had an outsized voice on the global stage for close to 100 years. Now there's a more humble, perhaps quieter American who could be just as influential. Let's get a final word from Alim, who's with me. A cardinal with an important voice within the church. Now he is an international statesman, representing more than 1 billion people. What a day for him, and what a day for the church.
Yeah, it is really hard to imagine a circumstance where one individual goes from such relative obscurity to such global prominence in the bat of an eye in quite the same way. And certainly there'll be a lot of scrutiny of Robert Prevost, as he used to be known, over the next couple of days, his political views, his track record, particularly on dealing with abuse. But certainly from that short balcony speech, we got a sense of what he plans to do with the job. He kept on talking about peace. He kept on talking about unity. He talked about us being all one people. He talked about building bridges, so clearly building on the work that Pope Francis was trying to do. And you know, the voting cardinals, before they went into conclave, one of the last things they heard from their seniors, from the elder cardinals, was that they had to find a man who could deal not just with the challenges of the church, but that humanity was facing today. And the fact that it was a short conclave, relatively, 4 votes, means that some of them, a number of them, must have been convinced from the outset that he was that man who is equipped to do it. Huge challenges for Pope Leo, but it'll be fascinating to watch what he does with the role.
It absolutely will. All right. Ali Makboul, our religion editor, many thanks for that. That's it from us here in Rome at the Vatican. Now, back to you, Ben, in the studio.
Clive, thank you. President Trump and Sir Keir Starmer have announced a new trade deal between the United States and the UK. The Prime Minister called the agreement historic. President Trump said it was a great deal for both countries. Well, US tariffs on British-made cars will be cut from 27.5% to 10%. American tariffs on steel and aluminium will be slashed to 0, and trade will become easier in both directions in agricultural products, especially beef. Here's our political editor, Chris Mason.
Transatlantic choreography, President Trump style. It goes like this.
Mr. Prime Minister, please take it away.
Thank you, Mr. President Donald. And
this is a really fantastic, historic day in which we can announce this deal between our two great
countries.
The President in the White House, the Prime Minister at a car factory in the West Midlands.
This is now turning out, I think, really to be a great deal for both countries, because it'll be really great for the UK also. So they're opening up the country. Their country is a little closed, and we appreciate that. There won't be any red tape. Things are going to move very quickly both ways.
Sir Keir Starmer had dashed here to Jaguar Land Rover in Solihull, a firm hammered so much by tariffs, it suspended exports to America.
Just a few moments ago, I spoke to President Trump, the President of the United States, and I'm really pleased to announce to you, and I wanted to come to you to announce that we've agreed the basis of a historic economic prosperity deal. And that is a deal that will protect British businesses and save thousands of jobs in Britain.
Prime Minister, this is a freeing up of trade conditions with America compared with where we were, but is it better than, say, 6 months ago, given, for instance, some tariffs are still there?
Well, Chris, the question you should be asking is it better than where we were yesterday? And I think if you should come out when you finished asking me questions and talk to the workforce here, because what this does is to reduce to zero the tariffs on steel and aluminium. Look how important that is. Reduces massively from 27.5% to 10% the tariffs on the cars that we export. So important to JLR, actually to the sector generally.
Back at Westminster, the initial reactions from the opposition parties.
What's happened is a small tariff deal to fix some of the changes which Donald Trump made last month. We are now in a worse position than we were in March. That's not something to write home about.
There's a lot of tariffs still going to be hitting our industries, how it's going to affect our farmers. That's why Liberal Democrats believe there should be a vote in Parliament. The government's got to publish this deal and allow MPs to scrutinise it and vote on it.
There's a lot more detail to come out, but you know what? We're heading in the right direction, and we have an American president who's pro-Britain, and we can take this much further.
It is to that detail people will now turn to dissect the implications for industries, businesses around the UK. Chris Mason, BBC News.
Well, as we heard there, the Prime Minister said the trade deal will protect British businesses and thousands of British jobs. But how good is this agreement? Here's our economics editor, Faisal Islam.
The winner from today's deal-making is the country's biggest car exporter and manufacturing employer, Jaguar Land Rover. 100,000 British cars now face a 10% tariff, down from 27.5% on exports to the US, lined up here near Bristol. This saves over £1 billion, what insiders said was an existential threat to the car industry.
It creates the certainty that we need to continue to invest going forward. Not only for JLR, but actually for the whole automotive industry in the UK.
A similar deal, albeit at zero tariffs, applies to steel too. Our second biggest export, medicines, will also be treated preferentially. But there will be more US beef imported, albeit not of the hormone-treated type, which remains illegal. Some farmers have doubts.
I'm very sceptical about doing deals with America in particular, or any big food producers who've got a huge advantage over us. We're a small island with a big population. And in America, they've got lower standards than us.
The White House's own chart, however, showed the biggest decision, that a 10% tariff levied on the UK would remain in place, raising billions from the export of UK goods.
They've agreed to open their markets, and that will add $5 billion of opportunity to American exporters. So the question is, why would they do that now? Because they've never done it before, and we still have a 10% tariff on, which will produce $6 billion of revenue for the United States.
Back in the UK, the global trade war is casting a shadow over the economy, but it did help make the case for another interest rate cut from the Bank of England.
I think a UK-US trade agreement is important. It's important in its own right, but it's also important as a signal, I hope, of many more to come. And that's important for us in the UK because what happens in the rest of the world affects us.
If you put together a rate cut with the prospect of more, The idea that the economy in the first 3 months of this year was growing by 0.6%, and this deal with the US, the prospect of a substantive deal with the European Union and the Gulf, and what was agreed with India, you do start to sketch out a picture of a potential turning point after years of economic turmoil. Overall, US trade barriers are still much higher for the UK than before President Trump. But at a time of considerable trade turmoil, the UK has secured some protection, especially for cars, and done so in a way that clears the path for a deal with the EU. Faisal Islam, BBC News.
So, as we were hearing there, the Bank of England has cut interest rates today. They are down from 4.5% to 4.25%. The bank's governor hinted there could be more rate cuts to come in the next few months, helping millions of homeowners potentially with their mortgages. Well, Faisal's with me now in the studio. Faisal, how much is this interest rate cut here today the result of those US tariffs and those fears about global trade?
And the first thing to say is interest rate cuts are really very important. If you think about the size of the benefit to the economy from, for example, the US deal or the India deal, 1% cut off interest rates, which we've had over the past year. This was the fourth of four cuts we've had. Well, that's much bigger in terms of how it's going to impact not just the economy, but people at home in terms of mortgage costs, borrowing costs, and for businesses too. And you're right that the prospect of trade turmoil and the uncertainty around the world did weigh on the minds of the 9-member committee. It was split 3 ways. 5 members, including the governor, Andrew Bailey, voted for a 0.25% cut. 2 voted for no cut, but 2 voted for a bigger cut of 0.5%, which signals that there will be more cuts to come over the next year. But there's just so much uncertainty. We don't know whether these tariff turmoil, will it raise prices? Will it reduce prices because as it is reducing for gas and electricity, or from the diversion of trade from China, for example? Lots of uncertainty, but some good news on trade and on interest rate cuts as well for those that are borrowers.
OK, Faisal, thank you. Now, tonight, Donald Trump has spoken on the phone with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky to discuss the terms of a possible ceasefire. Mr. Trump wants a 30-day unconditional truce between Russia and Ukraine. So let's go live to Washington and join Sarah Smith, who's there for us tonight. Sarah, any more details on this?
Yes, a little bit. I mean, it's worth saying first that the fact that this call happened at all is important. It shows just how much relations have improved between Volodymyr Zelensky and Donald Trump since they met in Rome a couple of weeks ago. They really do seem to have put that disastrous spat in the Oval Office back in March behind them now and are able to have these kind of discussions. Donald Trump is getting really impatient with the peace process in Ukraine. He wants to see a ceasefire very quickly and then meaningful peace negotiations. But Mr. Zelensky was, of course, able to point out to him on the phone today that the barrier to that is not him. He's ready to call a ceasefire. It's Russia. And we got a clue yesterday as well when the American Vice President J.D. Vance was talking about this. He said Russia's asking for too much, that they're looking for too many concessions. So clearly they are being seen as the barrier right now. And after that conversation took place, Donald Trump posted on social media that if there isn't movement soon, he will consider imposing more sanctions. And when he says that, he's talking about sanctions on Russia, not on Ukraine.
OK, Sarah, thank you very much. Well, meanwhile, in Ukraine itself, the fighting continues, with the authorities there saying Russia continues to attack across the entire front, despite an order from Russia's President Putin for a 3-day ceasefire this week. Well, for its part, Russia accuses Ukraine of trying to make new incursions in the Kursk region. Our correspondent, Yogita Limai, reports now from Dnipro.
As day broke over eastern Ukraine, we drove towards one of the most intense front lines of this war, to see if the ceasefire that Russia had announced had indeed started. Down in the trenches of a Ukrainian artillery unit, it seemed like any other day. These soldiers had just received the coordinates of a target they were ordered to hit. In the past half an hour here, we've heard lots of explosions, both incoming and outgoing. So it's not a ceasefire here in the trenches and on the front lines. Ukraine had rejected President Vladimir Putin's proposal of a 3-day temporary ceasefire because it believes Russia uses this time to resupply and then strike again with force. Instead, what Ukraine says is that at any time it's willing to accept and implement America's proposal of a 30-day ceasefire and negotiations. This is a war of attrition, each side trying to wear the other down. No one here believes there will even be a pause soon. Serhiy is this unit's commander.
They didn't stop attacking last night. We heard glide bombs and drone strikes. You cannot trust the Russians. There is no truce. We are always prepared for everything.
We drive north to the closest city where civilians are still living. Dobropilya is about 12 miles from Russian positions. As we meet residents here, there's a rolling thunder-like sound of distant bombing, not strong enough for the camera to pick up. We can clearly actually right now hear the sounds of explosions continuously. They're coming from outside the city, not very close by. Is it any different today than it was yesterday or the day before that?
You can hear the explosions. This is what Russia's ceasefire sounds like. That is why I say you can't trust them.
For more than 3 years here, there's been barely any respite from fighting. Alexander tells us he's scared for his family, scared that every day the war moves closer to his home. And one day he might be forced to flee. Yovit Alamay, BBC News, Eastern Ukraine.
India and Pakistan have blamed each other for escalating violence. India has accused Pakistan of launching drone and missile attacks on 3 military bases in India and Indian-administered Kashmir. Pakistan denies it, but claims it did shoot down 25 Indian drones. Well, the conflict centres on Kashmir, a disputed territory claimed by both India and Pakistan in full. India said it hit what it called 9 terrorist infrastructure sites on Wednesday in retaliation for a militant attack on tourists in Indian-administered Kashmir last month. Well, in a moment, we'll hear from our Pakistan correspondent, Azadeh Mashiri, who's in Islamabad. First, though, to Samira Hussain, who's in Delhi. And Samira, what are the Indian authorities saying tonight?
Well, Ben, we're actually just hearing that the air raid sirens are again sounding off in Jammu in Indian-administered Kashmir, and that blackouts across the region have resumed. And earlier, just a few hours ago, in fact, we heard from eyewitnesses that said that they could see and hear explosions and see people running in fear. The situation is really quite tense, and residents have been warned not to leave their homes. Now, the Indian Army said that it took down an air defense system in Lahore, Pakistan. It also accuses Pakistan of launching missiles and drones at 3 military bases. Now, those were intercepted, and this is something that Pakistan absolutely denies. But what is really key here is that one of those military bases that was targeted was not inside Indian-administered Kashmir, but outside in the neighboring state of Punjab. Now, if that's true, well, India will certainly look at this as a significant escalation in this conflict by Pakistan.
Samira, thank you very much. And let's go to Azadeh Mashiri. And Azadeh, what's the latest we're hearing from the Pakistani authorities?
Well, we spoke to the defence minister only moments after news of explosions and a blackout was coming out of Indian-administered Kashmir, and he denied any involvement by Pakistan. In his words, should Pakistan attack, it would be known all over the world. And amidst all these claims and counterclaims, he rejected any claims that military infrastructure across the country had been damaged by drones or strikes. And he insisted that Pakistan had not launched any drones of their own or any missiles into Indian territory. Now, the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Shahbaz Sharif, did have a phone call today. And Khwaja Asif, the Defense Minister, said that he did think there was some hope in terms of de-escalation in that call, but that he feels the time for breakthrough is no longer possible. And that statement carries a lot of weight when the prospect of an escalated conflict is hovering across this region.
Azadeh, thank you very much. OK, let's go back now to Jane at Buckingham Palace.
Ben, thank you so much. Today's ceremony is marking the 80th anniversary of VE Day, focused on honouring those who lost their lives in that war and giving thanks to the surviving veterans. In his speech tonight, the King reminded the audience that as the number of those who lived through the Second World War so sadly dwindles, the more it becomes our duty to carry their stories forward. I've been talking to John Dennett, who was 17 when he joined the Royal Navy and trained as an anti-aircraft gunner. I went to meet John at his home in Merseyside. Now 100 years old, he told me his story.
My mum said you can't go, and she hid my birth certificate. But my dad said do him good, and he was right. I enjoyed my time in the Navy. It was exceptional.
John served on a landing ship tank, flat-bottomed vessels which come up to the beaches to let off infantry and tanks. He took part in a number of key operations in North Africa and Italy.
From all angles, the bombers come in to attack.
I've seen ships go down, and nothing worse than seeing lads in the water.
When you were on the gun, was that frightening?
It's got a steel plate that you look through. So when you're behind that, you think he can't hit me. And it's a good job we thought that way. Like when you think now, you wouldn't have really done it now.
His boat, the LST-322, was among those ready for D-Day in 1944.
There was hundreds of ships, literally. You couldn't see the water because the sea was black with them. We went in second wave onto the beach, and we stayed there all day because our big landing craft had to wait for the tide to return. And there's 2 Marines in a boat fishing bodies out the water. I didn't twig on at the time. Now when I think of it, there's somebody's son, on my neck. It's sad.
John and his crewmates were in a camp in England when VE Day was declared.
I can remember us walking down the middle of the road singing our heads off. But we realised the war wasn't over. We were thinking of the war that was out in the Far East.
For many years now, he's given talks in schools about the war. What's his message to younger generations on this 80th anniversary?
For them to realise that those lads gave their lives for what they are today. If Hitler had won the war, God knows what would have happened to us.
John Dennett, who spoke to me just a few days ago. That takes us to a look at the weather. Here's Darren Betts. Darren.
Thanks very much, Jane. It was cool underneath the cloud today, but over the next few days there's going to be more sunshine around and temperatures are going to be rising. But there's also the chance of some rain to come in later in the weekend across some southern parts of the UK. It's not going to get very far north. All these areas still going to be dry. We've had almost 3 weeks without rain at Lucas in Fife, 17 days at Morecambe and also in Bradford. And in Bradford and many other parts of England and parts of Wales as well, we've had a lot more cloud today, but it is tending to break up now. So with clear skies overnight, it'll turn quite chilly, particularly across parts of northern England where temperatures are going to be close to freezing. And we may start tomorrow with some misty low cloud, especially through the Midlands, but it's not going to last long at all. Sunshine is going to be developing far and wide, and as temperatures rise, we've just got a little bit of fair weather cloud here and there, nothing particularly extensive. And it's going to be a warmer day, noticeably so for the Midlands and eastern parts of England. It could be
be across northern parts of mainland Scotland that we see the highest temperatures of 22 Celsius. Now, later in the weekend, it's this area of low pressure that's going to move a bit further north that brings the chance of some thundery showers. There is a weather front approaching the northwest as well, but we still have high pressure sitting over the UK on Saturday. And that's why we're going to have another day where it's probably going to be dry. There'll be lots of sunshine and just again a bit of fair weather cloud. There's a chance of 1 or 2 showers across northern parts of the Highland, and then later in the day the cloud increases in the far southwest of England. But temperatures are continuing to rise, so widely temperatures 21 or 22 degrees. And through Sunday and Monday it's going to stay warm for most of us as well. There is this chance of some rain in the south, and that's focused more towards the southwest of England, and that'll push its way into Wales as well. But with the sunshine in the east, we'll see the highest temperatures. Jane.
Darren, thank you very much. And in a moment, it's time for the very latest news wherever you are. But I'll leave you with a look at today's commemorations on the 80th anniversary of VE Day. Good night.
Long live the cause of freedom. God save the King.
Good evening and welcome to BBC London. As we've been hearing, it's been a day of reflection, commemoration and remembrance, marking the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War in Europe. 2,000 people attended a service of Thanksgiving at Westminster Abbey, alongside the King and Queen, Prime Minister and other special guests. There were about 70 surviving veterans too. Relatives remembered family members, including one woman's great-grandmother who worked in a munitions factory and had written of her memories of the end of World War II in London.
They sang their hearts out with many of the war songs, and London was deafened once again. Not from the bombs and artillery fire, but from the depths of human feeling. People climbed on anything they could, statues, buildings, cars, and every lamppost was scaled.
Well, at midday, a 2-minute silence was held. Londoners stopped in their tracks, including at King's Cross Station, to remember those who lost their lives during the Second World War. Elsewhere, the day was marked with celebratory events, including tea dances and parties for those who still remember VE Day for themselves. At one of those events in Swanley, there were some bittersweet memories.
It's a day of remembrance for me, because I lost so many friends during the war, and yeah, I do think of them a lot. You know, it's they're all good. They were all good friends. That one friend in particular, Teddy Knight, he was a fighter pilot, and Typhoons, I think it was, he was on. And also all my other friends that got killed. There was quite a few that got killed flying, you know.
Well, this evening, bells rang out across the capital to mark the 80th anniversary of that momentous Allied victory, the end of the Second World War in Europe, including at St Paul's and Southwark cathedrals.
Well, bells have always been part of marking great national events, and they rang out to celebrate the victory in Europe 80 years ago. They rang out again when the war ended. So it's part of a noble tradition, and it's just saying we are remembering as a place. And we want the world to know that we're remembering because it really matters.
Well, it may have ended 80 years ago, but in many parts of the capital, you'll still find reminders of the conflict, from damaged buildings to underground spaces designed to protect people. Wendy Harrell has been taking a look at the scars the city still bears.
Sirens and flames night after night when the Blitz began in London in 1940.
Never since the Great Fire of 1666 has such a roaring furnace swept through our capital.
The priority then was to protect lives. Air raid shelters were being built in gardens across the capital. Today, very few survive. This Anderson shelter behind terraced houses in Oval saved a family's life when a bomb fell nearby.
That dash from house to here in an air raid must have been terrifying.
Absolutely. You'd have come out of the house clutching your gas mask. In the middle of the night, it would have been pitch black, planes going overhead, sirens going. And just to understand this is how people had to survive and live is important.
The Luftwaffe is again making night hideous.
London was again bombarded later in the war. A fragment from that violent episode survives on this street in Westminster.
It's just so poignant. This was once inside a home, and that blast wiped out, of course, this house, but also a number of houses along this street and a few of the surrounding ones as well.
From the first bombing raids early in the war, right up until 1944 and the second wave, an estimated 12,000 metric tons of bombs fell on London, and 30,000 civilians were killed. The damage here is left as a memorial to those people, and it's who we think about on VE Day. Wendy Hurrell, BBC London.
A look at some of the day's other news stories now. And a teenager's been found guilty of attempted murder after stabbing a boy with a zombie knife at last year's Notting Hill Carnival. 19-year-old Rumaru Tuat was convicted of stabbing Kamani Spooner with a 12-inch blade. He'll be sentenced next month. The root cause of a fire that shut down Heathrow Airport for almost a day remains unknown. That's according to the initial findings of an investigation into what happened. The incident at North Hyde substation affected around 1,300 flights in March. And two brothers have received a £20,000 fine and been put on the rogue landlord database after 15 tenants were found crammed inside a 7-bed property in North London. Vimal and Ravi Kanjibudia rented out the property to students who slept on mattresses on the floor. Safety doors had also been removed. OK, that takes us to the weather now with Darren Bett.
Hello there. It felt a little cool out there today with more cloud around, but tomorrow will feel warmer, and that's because we've got sunnier skies on the way. Now, we may well see a bit of misty low cloud developing later on in the night, and we'll start with temperatures down as low as 3 or 4 degrees early tomorrow morning. But that mistiness won't last long. The sun soon gets through that, and there'll be a lot more sunshine tomorrow. Just a little bit of fair weather cloud, but that'll probably get blown away by that gentle easterly breeze. So temperatures are going to be higher tomorrow. We could see temperatures getting up to a very pleasant 19 degrees. And if anything, it's going to get warmer for the outlook. And generally speaking, it's a dry outlook. There'll be plenty of sunshine around, temperatures well above average for the time of year, getting up to around 23 Celsius.
OK, that's it from the late team. But for a reminder of how London marked a momentous week, 80 years on from the end of World War II in Europe, from the tributes, the celebrations and the voices of the dwindling number of veterans, head to BBC London's website. We're back tomorrow morning, but for now, from all of us here on the team, we wish you a very good night.
Now we go to Switzerland.
This is the moment we've all been waiting for.
What the hell just...
The reaction in the arena is sensational.
We are ready to fly again with
United Kingdom!
Fingers crossed, ladies and gentlemen. The Eurovision Song Contest semi-final, Tuesday at 8 on BBC One and iPlayer.